Sure. Is the live stream on? Right? Yes. Perfect. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. It's a pleasure to see all of you here, both offline and our online listeners. Today we'll discuss a very important topic around the critical initiatives that all of us speakers have led on behalf of our favorite and beloved community members, volunteers, team members. Big shout out to them. I would love to start with quick intros. I don't know if you'd like to start, give a little bit background of what you've been doing and what you've done.
Hello everyone, my name is Alona. I'm a co-founder and operational lead of Ukraine DAO. And a DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. In our case, it's basically a community that has helping Ukraine win as its mission. And so we started kind of as a fundraising initiative, so that was our main focus in the first few weeks. So we raised about $8 million worth in crypto, distributed the vast majority of it to Come Back Alive, which is a very prominent Ukrainian NGO that supports the armed forces of Ukraine. We also made a large donation to Ukraine's official wallet, as well as to a charity called Outright that supports LGBT people in crisis in Ukraine, who are often disproportionately affected by the war. And also made a smaller donation to a charity providing mental health support. Currently, we are focusing mainly on helping Ukraine on the info front. It's a whole separate front line, to be honest, and I'm pretty sure that Russia has their propaganda budget is part of military budget, right? Seriously. So there is a reason why they spend a huge amounts of money and huge amounts of effort goes into spreading lies and disinformation about Ukraine. And something that one of Ukraine's officials said to us on the call that I really couldn't agree with more is that if Ukraine loses the info war, no amount of donations will save us. And that's why it's something that's very important to myself and to our team. And that's something that is that's something that we focus on at the moment. But yeah, our help has been very multifaceted, and we were actually connected with Come Back Alive by Rev, who was very, he was instrumental in Ukraine DAO's early days, and then we connected a few months later afterwards, and Kyiv Tech Summit was, it's been kind of the product of our collaboration with our other friend as well. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you, Alona. It's been definitely a fantastic journey. We actually met literally 2 days ago. Imagine helping a country for 6 months straight and then just meeting offline for the first time. I love the story of Ukraine DAO, and I think everything that you've been doing is incredibly important, and the fact that you've been able to even break the world record is, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Ukraine DAO actually broke a world record by selling the highest, they auctioned the largest Ukrainian flag that raised how much was that?
Over 6 million, so it was the 10th most expensive NFT.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, in terms of myself, I'm one of co-founders and founding partners at Unchain, which is a Web3 nonprofit, focusing on humanitarian aid in Ukraine, more so focusing on these most affected areas since day one. We started on 24th of February, but the story goes a little bit 10 days ago, where the other team were forming this Unchain, which in itself, the word Unchain was coming from this idea of, breaking a chain of human suffering in Ukraine. And when the war started, I wasn't in Ukraine. I actually just came back 2 days ago. I'm fully committed to stay here and continue helping Ukraine. I was celebrating my anniversary with my wife and kid, and the war started. I was shocked in a way, but though I knew that I must do something, and there was understanding that I'm not the only one. There are a lot of other people that for sure want to help. So I started reaching out, exploring who's like thinking of what they're planning or doing or already doing, and then I sort of seen, you know, folks trying to fundraise, but without understanding how crypto works. They were coming from more so like, you know, fintech background. They had a great team, though I told them this is not going to work. Like you cannot just open, you know, like just create a wallet address and expect, you know, to fundraise millions. It doesn't work like that, especially if literally no one knows you in crypto. And that's when I connected them, merged sort of my ideas with their ideas, then more people came, and we sort of formed this, you know, shared collective that used Web3 tech, in this case, you know, the multi-sig wallet, the transparency side, and, you know, the other tooling to ensure that we can leverage the Web3 tooling to sort of build this tens of, you know, years of nonprofit experience and like reputation that nonprofit builds by utilizing, you know, in this case that was a, you know, Gnosis Safe, the multi-sig tooling that allowed us to get, you know, a lot of credible people on board. For example, you know, co-founder at Gitcoin, who hosted a great talk yesterday on public goods, highly recommended. A co-founder of Near, Ilya Polosukhin, and other trusted folks. And yeah, and then we started. Within the first 13 hours, we raised around $1.6 million in crypto. A week later, we had 3 million. A month in, we had 7 million. And then roughly within less than 2 months, we had around 10 million, including 2.5 million donation from Vitalik Buterin. Yeah. Let's talk about impact. I mean, all these numbers sounds cool, but what have they actually done? Like, can you share more sort of, especially, you know, on the humanitarian aid side, on the sort of, you know, like fighting through propaganda, and like, could you share more like of the use cases that Ukraine has led?
So the way we work is that we have separate working groups, right? So something that I've quickly learned through my previous experience with DAOs is that the mistake they often make, they'll issue a token, and that becomes a governance token. And so the decision making is made through voting using that token, right? So in my view, it was from the very beginning, it was pretty clear that that wasn't going to work for us. And so we are not tokenized. Ukraine DAO doesn't have a token, which I think is a great thing in our case. And that was because very often, well, something that was very important to me is that this project remains Ukraine-centric and that the decisions are made by Ukrainians, right? So, for example, in the beginning, it wasn't clear to some of the contributors who would be, I don't know, American, or they would be from Europe or from somewhere else. They couldn't understand why it was that Ukrainians wanted to support the army, right? So the Ukrainian army that has just overwhelming support in Ukraine, and every Ukrainian person in that group chat that we had, they were like hugely in favor of supporting Come Back Alive, right? Because it's the most loved charity in Ukraine, the most transparent, the most, the most reputable, right? But to a person from America, maybe they've just discovered Ukraine, right? They want to help, they have some previous Web3 experience, but they just don't know about Come Back Alive, they've never heard about it. And if there was like a governance token, right, and they, as a contributor, they would be able to vote, they would vote against supporting the Ukrainian army. They would be like, guys, let's support the Red Cross. And we're like, no, maybe ICRC is not is not the right choice here, you know, that kind of thing. And so our focus has been, apart from, so eventually the Ukrainians won, right? So you managed to convince everyone that no, actually the armed forces, the Come Back Alive Foundation, that's where the majority of funds should go. But stuff like this, so our main kind of, our focus has shifted over time. So we are developing, the more we engage with people abroad, the more we learn. So in the beginning, we were like, guys, speak about Ukraine, continue to speak about Ukraine, right? And then over the last few months, we've shifted to another narrative, which is listen to Ukrainians, right? So before you speak about Ukraine, go speak to the actual Ukrainian people and then speak about Ukraine, right? So there is a crucial difference in that, because very often, I see people who are maybe less familiar with the actual narrative from Ukrainians. They will speak in Ukraine's defense, but the things that they will be saying, they are not necessarily reflective, right, of what it is that we want to communicate to the world. So yeah, our community, it has become like I'm very proud of it. It's like very Ukraine-centric. We've had a lot of Ukrainians join recently, and so we collect and publish lots of materials that maybe people abroad, they won't find it anywhere else, right? So for example, we've noticed that Reuters, the news agency, has been consistently pushing Russian propaganda, and that is something that, again, not everyone in the West knows, and unfortunately a lot of people go to Reuters for unbiased, objective reporting, which is absolute nonsense in Ukraine's case. And so we will publish a page after collecting all the evidence that we have of the misconduct on this side. And, apart from just saying, Reuters is trash, we bring them a page where we explain in great detail what is wrong with that coverage. We also, that's on the info front. We also have Ukraine DAO trucks. So we have about 30 trucks at our disposal delivering humanitarian aid. We have a team of translators that can pretty quickly turn around, if let's say our friends from the Ministry of Defense Information Agency, they'll have a request to provide subtitles for some videos they have, that we can produce that within an hour or two, obviously free of charge. Yeah, we have a working group pretty much for everything, and they govern themselves independently, right? So instead of having that clumsy mechanic that many other DAOs have, where to do anything, you write a proposal, and then someone writes a proposal for 3 days, then the whole DAO votes on it, and very often people who maybe are not competent in that area or not qualified in that area, they will, sometimes it becomes a hurdle, right? So we don't have that, and that allows us to be very agile. So each working group is activated when there is a need for it, and if there is a need for it, right? So not all of them are equally active at the same time. Obviously, people have other things, the other projects that they're working on, but I know that we can always rely on them. So if there is a need for a translation, if there is a need for, collecting evidence on some certain subjects, then we always, creating a design for something, there is always a group chat that we can go to and be like, guys, we need this and that done. So that's how we work. What about Unchain Fund?
I love the story. There's some things I'll go back to. In terms of Unchain, we operate a little bit differently. First, we're not a DAO. We're a hybrid between sort of a DAO and centralized nonprofit. When we started, there wasn't a plan. Let's build a nonprofit. When we raised sort of the first $1 million, obviously we were thinking of, Come Back Alive, and which I absolutely love, and different nonprofits, though most of them aren't as good as Come Back Alive. It's just, we knew that there should be someone who will actually be helping, just people, like in Kharkiv, and which is my hometown, and there was some local orgs, some local volunteers, but there wasn't that much of them. And we wanted to be, to sort of gather the people together who might help on this, the most dangerous areas. And fast forward, we ended up with 3,000 volunteers, coordinating 3,000 volunteers, and sort of becoming like this HQ of volunteers, and support and distribution of the funding, of the supply, like humanitarian supply. And we helped through different means and different verticals, starting from something as sort of seemingly simple as delivering food for those who are, lost home and their building was bombarded, etc., to actually evacuating people. A lot of our volunteers were literally risking their lives, going to the most dangerous areas to evacuate people every day. At the same time, we were buying, the protective equipment for our volunteers, for other people in need. We were buying the medical, medicine. We were also buying the medical equipment for the, hospitals, for example, for the surgery. As you might guess, in wartime, it's definitely needed. And eventually, we knew that we couldn't just go like that, and we didn't want to just always be focusing on this kind of verticals, even though they're really important. We knew that we want to do something more scalable and more transparent, because no matter how much filters we build, like filtering the volunteers, literally everyone that we donated to, be that an individual, a nonprofit organization, a volunteer group, they all been KYC'd. We know all the details of everyone that we helped to, and all of them it was mandatory for them to provide the proofs of their work, media proofs, the checks, as much documentation as possible. Otherwise, we weren't continuing funding them. And there was some also cases where there was some, in a way, weird things. So even police were kind of in the process of investigation. There was, the one donation of $5K or something, and it wasn't that clear what volunteers have done for that. These things happen, and I think it's very important to be transparent about this. There's always a small percentage of people that try to cheat, pretending that they're real. Also, because of our sort of filters, we identified around 8% of people that were even, sharing their IDs, etc. They were all fake. People literally faking their IDs. I remember there was one mother, she faked her kid's ID. Her kid was 20-something in real life. I'm actually not sure if that's her kid or some random person, lol. And on the document, he was 12. And she put his old photo, lol, on Photoshop or something and sent to us. So there was a lot of, these weird things. At the end of the day, we launched Unchained Help Card as sort of a debit card that helped us distribute funds to the mothers with kids up to 16 years old. The focus was always on the mothers who were in the region or nearby the regions that have been most affected, obviously including Kharkiv and other areas. And we managed to distribute to around 20,000 plus people. On average, that was 6.9K cards were issued. Imagine that mother could have one kid or 3, 4 in different cases. I know there's also a Binance help card, which they focused mostly on the refugees. Compared to them, we focused mostly on the not mostly, only on Ukrainians that were in the country and from most affected areas. And overall, we helped around 400,000 Ukrainians to this day. Even though the amount of sort of donations, it all changed, the dynamics has changed a lot. People get used to the wartime. Still, we are together with Ukraine DAO and some other really meaningful and hardworking, dedicated organizations and collectives collaborating to do some more creative, initiatives such as Kyiv Tech Summit, which is just a start for something bigger, to raise awareness, to sort of keep on providing more support that's needed, because it's not just about, as Alona mentioned, right? It's not just about the financial side. Like, we actually also launched the crypto onboarding program for women. We have around 4,000 women going through that program. It's like fully nonprofit, free, just educational content. And that's also just a start, which we launched with the LA, Ukraine. They have 1.3 million Ukrainian women readers. Obviously not in the wartime, but that's used to be. It will come back to those numbers. And yeah, thank you. I'd love to ask Alona, you mentioned like Red Cross and different similar nonprofits which both of us don't like. Tell us why.
Okay, so there has been a lot of donations go to organizations like ICRC, different UN initiatives, and so on. The vast majority of those funds do not end up in Ukraine. Ukraine DAOs, for example, Ukraine DAO doesn't even really have an operational budget, right? So the expenditure is $5,000 a month. I am the only person that's paid by the DAO currently. By the way, if anyone wants to sponsor...
I'd love to add, the DAO chose to pay Alona.
Yeah,
Alona was actually refusing that. I was voting yes. And Alona was like, no, no way. But I mean, Alona...
So that was not initiated by myself. The team wrote up, actually, that was one of very few proposals that were actually in writing, wrote up by our co-founder Steve, who realized that I wasn't, I was completely, immersed in in coordinating evacuation efforts on the ground, and he realized I wasn't paid by anyone else. But long story short, I'm the only person currently paid by the DAO. If anyone wants to sponsor our operational funds, I would love to set it up finally so that we can, but just pay for basic stuff like our Asana and Ocean licenses and so on, because currently we are using the free ones that I've managed to source for us, and I would love to for us to pay other team members as well. But this is like a fraction of a percentage of the total DAO treasury, right? So it's like less than 0.1% of something, right? It's a tiny amount of the total DAO treasury, whereas a charity like ICRC will have a huge operational budget, and they will often, I've seen stuff like them renting out a whole hotel in Kyiv so that no one bothers them, stuff like that. Or like buying, I don't know, Toyota Land Cruiser cars for them to drive around Lviv, right? So they're nowhere to be found in Kharkiv.
I've seen those.
It's ridiculous. It's just like, that's actual like funds embezzlement, the way they are treating the funding that they get is just it's just outrageous. And so I talk a lot to volunteers who work in Kharkiv, and they are always like, guys, when is ICRC coming here? Like, why are they nowhere to be found? And so the reason why they are not loved in Ukraine is because they are not doing the work that they are supposed to be doing. They are engaged in what's essentially appeasement politics in Russia. So they were going to open an office in Rostov-on-Don with the funds that were donated to Ukraine. I'm not sure actually if they've ended up doing it, but they were definitely planning to do it. The director is out there in Moscow shaking hands with Lavrov. And so the whole behavior that they've exhibited towards Ukraine has been completely unacceptable. And people should not be donating to ICRC at all if they want to help Ukraine. And so I'm not saying, I'm never out there saying like donate to Ukraine DAO. I always say donate to whichever charity you want that is in Ukraine, that is a Ukrainian volunteer network. It can be Come Back Alive, there can be multiple other ones, I can recommend some. But long story short, the huge international organizations are pretty much have all failed Ukraine. They've not been helpful. Well, some people say, well, they're doing some good stuff. It's not good enough, right? It's been pretty much counterproductive to the cause. They're normalizing Russia's violence. They're often normalizing the aggressor, or they're often putting Ukraine and Russia on sort of one level. They struggle to call a war, right? So the UN have banned their staff from using the words war and invasion about Ukraine, right? So some weird terminology is used, like a crisis, right? Or conflict. So it assumes that there is like both sides at fault or something. It's wrong. Or they call it sometimes volatile situation. I often say, like, volatile situation is what you see on the Russian stock market. Okay, what's happening in Ukraine? It's a war. So there should be no confusion about this. And that's why, like, I'm very vocal about this, because I absolutely hate them, So, yeah, that's your TLDR of the situation.
Yeah, it's actually insane if you think that maybe 30 or 20 cents out of each dollar that you donate, maybe or may not, actually goes to Ukraine, or probably not, or goes to the hotel in Ukraine that people stay in. Yeah, the problem that I have with a lot of nonprofits, even from our own experience with Unchain, we donated to 3 nonprofits, 100K each, 300K overall. And a week after, I asked for the reports, saying that, that's how we operate. We actually share reports daily. Could you share the reports of the money used? It's been like a week of the full-scale invasion, where you need to sort of, full-scale Russian invasion, when you need to act fast. You cannot just take weeks. And they said, we share reports at the end of the year, come back in a year, 6 months. And I was like, that's not going to work. Sorry, this is like, we will not donate anymore to you, because we cannot. This is just not the way we operate. We cannot wait like 8 months plus to share what we've done, how the money was distributed, especially in the wartime. And said that's what's sort of one of the kind of the last and most sort of critical moments where I knew, okay, we're going full in the nonprofit and trying to rebuild it with Web3 the way it should be. Like, ideally, I don't want to trust anyone. Like, literally, I don't want to trust anyone. I don't want to think this guy is good or bad. I don't want that. I don't want like a human factor. Of course, there's always human factor, but ideally, like excluding that from the equation and ensuring that there's no middleman and you just donate directly to the people. We're not at this stage. We're getting there, but this is literally what I want to see myself when I'm donating my money, not just in Ukraine, but other countries as well. Like my co-founder and I, just helping them launch, Save Pakistani movement to help, Pakistan. And obviously I'm not Pakistan. I have literally, like, I have only one friend from Pakistan and that's it. But still, it's important. We've also been fighting for women's rights in terms of abortion, etc. Again, like, I'm a man, I'm in Ukraine. Yes, I have friends in the US a lot, and I think that's important. So that's how that's why we should care as well, because it's human rights. And yeah, thank you, Alona. I think more people should sort of do their own due diligence. They should not trust just their common sense. It's not. Yes, some of this organization might have been good in the past, but your past does not determine your future. And even like, when I look at what we've done, for me, it's already the past. I don't think of it that much. I think, okay, what should I do next? Because, you cannot just be happy always about what you've done in the past. That's already your past.
I was speaking to this journalist from Thomson Reuters. So Thomson Reuters is separate from Reuters, the news agency. It's a non-profit, and so he was filming an interview at my house, and he was like, he asked me a question. Don't you feel like you've done enough for Ukraine already? And I was like, no, and neither should you. You know, no one should ever feel like they've done their bit. And now, at least, well, until Ukraine wins, right? At least that's my approach. Like, it's never been the case that I woke up in the morning. Well, usually I don't wake up in the morning in the first place because I don't go to bed.
I know, yeah.
But it's never happened that I woke up and I'm like, man, I've done so much. I don't know, I'm going on holiday. You know, I've not had since the 24th of February, I've not had a single day off or even like half a day off. And I'm not saying it's normal, that everyone should be like this, but I've never felt like, oh, like, you know, we've done so much, like this is enough. It's not enough. The war is not over. And yeah, everyone should continue to be, well, I think more engaged than ever right now, because it's a critical, I feel like right now is a critical turning point. And yeah, things are looking very promising, but it's also important to not underestimate your enemy and to continue until the victory of Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even after Ukraine wins, we should just keep on pushing this victory in different sectors. Innovation Web3 is just one of them. I'd love to talk about, you know, capital and coordination. What it takes to raise $8 million in crypto and beyond. Like, what made you get to that stage?
I think Nadia actually mentioned yesterday, the most important thing is to have friends, right? So the reason Ukraine DAO was possible was because I had friends who had the resources, including time and emotional resources, that I didn't have myself when the full-scale invasion started. So something that was happening in the early days of Ukraine DAO was that after that initial shock, right, that happened when my friend from Kharkiv, actually, that's how I found out. It was in the middle of the night, and my friend from Kharkiv messaged me saying that, you know, they were getting shelled, and Ukraine DAO was already all kind of set for, you know, for the, in case the invasion begins. We set up all the social media accounts and stuff, so group chats on the 21st of February, because I'd been very worried and I'd been protesting for weeks before the full-scale invasion began. And so I think that put us in a unique position to kind of start self-organizing very quickly. And so what was happening was that my friends then started pulling their friends to that group chat on Telegram, and so someone added you, right, as well to the group chat. But something that was happening was that Ukrainian people who needed some sort of help, like helping with the, you know, evacuation, or they would be looking, I don't know, to find a bulletproof vest somewhere, they didn't know where to ask, they would reach out to myself. And so then I was trying to help them through whatever other connections I had with other, you know, with the volunteers on the ground. And so that was all I was doing the first like couple of weeks at all. And a lot of fundraising efforts were done by our friends, right? So they would go out and initiate conversations and speak to people. Ilya Polosuchin was very instrumental in that. You were instrumental in that. Vitalik Buterin helped us a lot. So he came out on Twitter and said, guys, there is this DAO. Please support it. If you can, or spread the word. And so it was that kind of that's where kind of your identity, right, and your reputation in the community comes in. So if you are known to care deeply about a certain cause, there is going to be your friends who will help you get things off the ground when you need it. So yeah, to be honest, like fundraising was not, you know, that's where the nature of the DAO comes in, right? So. I have a certain skill set. I act on that skill set. Someone within the DAO is good at fundraising, and so they go and spread the word, you know. And it's Steve, our co-founder. He said something really profound, I think, about why Ukraine DAO became successful was because the most passionate person with the most right skill set for their position ended up in the right place in the right time. And so that's how we managed to do it. And that's how we managed to do every other task that we have at hand. It's because we engage with the person who is the most skilled and the most passionate as well for that kind of job.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's very important to making donations super simple. In case of Ukraine DAO, you had like ukrainedao.eth plus the wallet address, and the call to action was very clear. And obviously there was a lot of awareness, you know, retweets, shares. In case of, and as well as obviously the multisig, right, where Vitalik's father is also part of, which leads me to this point. Even fundraising, the way you set it up should be like very intuitive, but at the same time, like a no-brainer for someone to donate to. Like, for example, having Vitalik's father on, you know, multisig means that Vitalik's father believes you, right? And believes Ukraine DAO. Like, why would someone of that level do something bad?
You need to explain what a multisig is, right? So
let's do it.
For those who are less familiar with crypto, so a multisig is it means it stands for multi-signature. So it means that to carry out a transaction on a wallet, you need a certain number of people to approve that transaction. So for example, in Ukraine DAO's case, the quorum is 3 out of 5. So I cannot go and single-handedly, I don't know, transfer like 100K to my wallet because I need 3 people's approval to carry out that transaction. So for example, I don't know, for us to transfer $4 million to Come Back Alive, we would need, well, for example, Dima or Steve, our co-founder, or Matt, our co-founder. So there is, to sign that transaction. So there is 5 people in the multisig. It's myself, 2 other co-founders, Steve and Matthew. IX Shell, she is the highest selling female NFT artist in the world. And then we also have Dima Buterin, Vitalik Buterin's dad, in our Utopia Labs, it's our payment system. He's called Vitalik's original mentor. He's an amazing person with an incredible sense of humor. And he's been, apart from being on the multisig, he's also been a very good mentor. So in the beginning, he asked me a very good question. He was like, do you have your documentation written up? I was like, what kind of documentation do you mean? And he said, you need to write up like a 1-pager with your values, with your mission, setting out what it is that makes you different from another, like, let's say, Unchain Fund, right? Or let's say there is any other Web3 project. What is it that makes you, Ukraine DAO, different from other communities? And I can tell you, it wasn't easy writing it up. We wrote it up with the team, and then we threw it away completely, and we wrote it again because it was important for us to make sure that it's not just, you know, something that we just wrote it for it to be there. It really reflects who we are, and we really act on it up to this day, and we constantly rework it and update it. And so, yeah, stuff like that. His advice has been really invaluable, but going back to the multisig, it makes funds management much more secure, right? So it's not possible for someone to just decide that they want to make a transaction and to go and do it. And so you have to go and you have to cooperate with other people. You have to, you would have to explain to DIMA, for example, why we are making this transaction, what it's for. And that creates this reputational trust within the community that the funds will be managed well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in terms of on-chain, we also had some of the highly reputable Web3 builders, such as Near's co-founder Ilya Polosukhin, as well as the Gitcoin's co-founder Scott Moore, which is literally leading the public goods movement. And that was also one of these, no-brainer moments where you was like, okay, why would someone of that level, sacrifice their reputation? Alona, let's talk about those who want to help either by joining Ukraine DAO, Unchain, or actually starting something similar, be it in Ukraine or in some other country. What should they do? What is the blueprint?
Well, they can come into our Discord. So discord.gg/Ukraine DAO. They can come and say hello. We at Ukraine DAO, there is a distinction between community members who are doing amazing work with us. Sometimes, once we needed to proofread this translation of an interview with the director of Hermitage that we published on request of Come Back Alive. Very insightful interview, actually, but we needed help with translation and proofreading that, and we engaged community members. They came in and helped us to get work done fast. But then there is also a distinction between them and regular, kind of core contributors that we onboard, and our policy with that is onboard slowly, offboard quickly. We've almost never offboarded anyone actually, but the reason why it's important to onboard slowly, and I think with internet communities that's actually a really good approach, because you get to know someone, so over time you can get a better feeling of whether they are good for your team or not, right? So all our team members, they came in from being community members first, so they start hanging out with us, I don't know, in different Twitter spaces, or they come to our Discord, they say hello, they start talking to us, and over time we are like, okay, this person is really cool, we want them to be part of us, right? And then they become a core contributor. So in terms of how they can help, I always say to everyone, you have a certain skill set that nobody else has, right? So some of our contributors are really good at, I don't know, graphic design. Someone else is good as a kind of, they have kind of a PA kind of skill set. Someone else is a translator. We have a person specializing in researching Russian Nazism, right? So literally, it's a very underreported subject. Everyone is talking about the imaginary Ukrainian Nazis that I've personally never met in real life, but no one is talking about the huge problem of the actual neo-Nazis in Russia, And so, and we have a community, we have a team member who just puts out really cool, Twitter threads about that, and there is I personally see a huge value in it, and so it's hard to say how someone can help without engaging with them first. And I think within the DAO world, it's called wayfinding, right? So you join a community and you figure out what it is that you can contribute by kind of interacting with people and figuring out what it is that you can bring to the table. But I always say that the best way to onboard to a DAO is by having a conversation with another human, right? So it's not through reading through some page, going through some checklist. It's by finding someone in the community, reaching out, saying hello, and having a call, having a 15-minute call, So that's something that we always do with all new team members or even community members who are curious. It's the best thing you can do because that allows this kind of two-way feedback in terms of managing expectations and also finding out what's the best way for someone to contribute. What about Unchain Fund?
The way we started and the way we are changed in a way that, we started with evacuating people, we started with, delivering food, also providing shelter, etc. Right now we're focusing more on the tech side, scalability as well as Web3 onboarding. If there's anyone listening to us or in the room that wants to sort of help, volunteer, or become a part of the core team, would love to hear from you. Go to unchain.fund and then you'll find all the links, Discord, Telegram, Twitter, etc. Let you reach out to anyone from the team, or there's also volunteers that you can always reach out to and ask for help. I think one super important thing is, I know there are some folks that might be listening, they're also running sort of nonprofits or DAOs, is that it's not always about money. There's so much more you can do beyond just fundraising. Like nonprofit, DAOs, it's not just, especially like in this wartime, it's not just, oh, let's come together to fundraise. There's so much more things, like for example, besides fundraising, we're actually in this Web3 onboarding program, which is very, very close to me. I have another side startup, which I'm literally focusing on Web3 fundraising. I think it's very important, especially for Ukraine. For rebuilding Ukraine, there's more than 5.5 million Ukrainians, as it's stated on the report in December 2021. Probably it's much more right now because of wartime. A lot of Ukrainians use crypto, which is very friendly in Ukraine and very welcoming. And I think that finding a way to perhaps even mix them, find the intersection between fundraising and some of other initiatives that you can lead, it's very important. And would you like to ask any questions to me yourself, or something you'd like to discuss before we let our audience to ask questions?
What is it that you really struggled with that you didn't anticipate in the beginning of Unchain Fund?
Human coordination. I did not ever would think that I would receive more than 1,000 support requests every day and more than 100 people literally DMing me. Not everyone else, but me, because I'm the most active guy in the chat, lol. Even till this day, I'm receiving like Instagram DMs. I'm not sure how people find my personal Instagram, but people like, hey, can you help me with this and that? I said, yeah, reach out here, or I'm not the guy who's leading this. You have other people or volunteers. But even beyond, the sort of support requests that we received, we had like 3,000 volunteers, both online and offline, helping us from different, areas. And that was something I never experienced, like trying to coordinate that amount of people. And I still understood that you can't just coordinate that, obviously, like one person. It's impossible for you to do that. So we also built what you said, right? Like this working groups that were sort of, focused on different areas, and that's how we scaled. And another part of that was coordination is great. It's critical. It's important. It's almost everything. But at the same time, balancing that with transparency. We wanted to move fast, but we want to make that transparent. And I remember the early days when people were literally like pissed off at me, like, hey, you have this $1 million in your multi-sig, but you're not distributing that so fast. I said, yes, that's true, but we're doing that because we're doing extra checks. I don't want to just, send people because they said I need money. We just not operate in that way. Like, sorry, if you were expecting that, I'm sorry, we'll not do that. Like, we need to understand who is the person, why they need that money, what are they going to do with that, and ideally get some other references from. And that was kind of, it didn't take like weeks or even days. It was just a timeline where we set up this process. And also at the moment, like within the first 2 months of the February, March, we had a team of 60, 70. It was crazy, literally. I mean, my own startup is like 12 people, and there was like 70 people. But it was, in a way, easier because we had 4 founding partners, actually 5. CJ just didn't want to be a co-founder because he said, I'm British. I said, so what? He said, no, I'll just be on the multisig. So technically he's co-founder too. And, all of this like entrepreneurial spirit was part of Unchain, which helped us to lead that. What does it mean to be a co-founder of DAO?
I think to be a co-founder doesn't mean anything, because what makes a difference is actually running it on a daily basis, right? So as the operational lead, you have a lot of you have to wear so many hats. Like I think I'm very lucky that I was previously a very tired community manager, because I was like, I had a full-time job, then I started helping on, with FreeROS DAO, and then I became the operations community manager. So you develop like a very diverse skill set that you then need to, it's then challenged every day, right? So you have to deal with people who are pissed off. You have to deal, someone is tired, someone is just, there is like two people arguing between themselves about politics. Then, someone is asking you for a bulletproof vest. So like I personally have a problem with like saying no to people. So to me, like every message that I get, like asking for help, I try to do something. I don't think I've ever said to someone, "Oh, this is not my area. Like this is nothing I can do here." Like very rarely, maybe a couple of times when it was like it would have been something completely ridiculous. But yeah, it's within Ukraine DAO again, as you said, it's gone way beyond fundraising, and like my policy with it is that any Ukrainian person reaching out for me for some kind of help, yeah, maybe of course, like through the treasury, we only work through, we only work with like highly vetted, verified charities, right? But I can often like find them some sort of help through some, some other channels. Maybe I know someone who can help them. Maybe I can connect them to some group chat where they can ask for help. And so that is actually, yeah, that's been very, very. It's been like draining, but it's also very rewarding, because it's a community that was organized by friends, and I think it's to me, that's a great thing. Sometimes people are like critical of that. I think it's an amazing thing, and that's how Kyiv Tech Summit was organized, right? It's a bunch of friends who are helping other, the other friends, and like Ukrainian people right now, it's зараз немає чужих, right? There is no every Ukrainian person, you treat them as your family. And so that's, to me, has been the most like rewarding part of it, is just like Ukrainians discovering our project and me being proud of it. Like, it's not betraying the interests for the sake of like not being liked by someone. Like we got a lot of criticism for like criticism for criticizing ICRC, for example, and I'm like, yeah, I may have offended someone, but to me the trade-off between me offending someone and betraying the interests of people in my country, I'm always gonna stay loyal to them, and so I think the hardest thing about all of this has been getting a lot of hate. Getting a lot of hate when you are maybe not exactly in the right emotional state for that, but you just have to accept it, because again, as I said, like the trade-off between the two is it's worth it.
I actually love the way you literally communicate with the it's a very unique style.
I'm a Twitter troll, basically.
Yeah, I would say Alona is like unapologetically Ukrainian, which I love. Do we have time for questions? Yeah, we have 5 minutes. Great. Any questions? Obviously, unfortunately, I couldn't ask our online audience, but please.
Hi, I'm Robin. One of the things I was kind of wondering about is what do you kind of see as the difference with fundraising between like Web 2 and conventional like nonprofits versus Web 3s and DAOs. And then a second part to the question, I guess, is what do you think is kind of important to convey when it comes to fundraising in wartime versus like in peacetime? Like why the immediacy for certain things, and especially donating specifically to a military is something that people need to be doing?
To me, the difference between something that makes Web3 fundraising stands out is obviously the transparency, right? So we can show exactly where the funds went on blockchain. There is no there is no room for doubt, right? So we can report, like everyone can see immediately where the funds have gone without even us needing to produce like some sort of reports, even though we do have a page that sets out the donations. But if someone wants to, they can immediately see what's happening through blockchain, right? On Etherscan, they can see everything. Sorry, what's the second part of the question was why it's important, what's important to communicate, right? I think a lot of people, because they are used to a certain narrative in the West, they're like, okay, I am against war, therefore I will only support the charities who help civilians, right? So something that people don't understand is that the best way to help civilians is to help the army, because we've seen what happens to the civilians when the Ukrainian army has to retreat and the Russians take over a city or a town. The civilians are subjected to horrendous torture, all sorts of abuse, murder, all sorts of violence, right? So and like I often say, like there is no civilians right now in Ukraine, right? Everyone has one mission: to fight Russia until Ukraine's victory, because it's an unprovoked genocidal invasion that we could not have prevented, unfortunately, because we didn't do anything for it to happen. Like all you need to do to provoke Russia is to exist, right? That's all. That's already bad enough for Russia. And so something that I want for everyone to understand is that helping the Ukrainian army is the best way to help the Ukrainian civilians. And the civilians, well, the army itself, they were civilians yesterday, right? They didn't want to go to war. No one wants to be doing that. But they have to. They don't have a choice, right? And so the least that we can do is to make sure that they are just armed to their teeth. And so that's why it's so important to, and again, Ukraine DAO also has, you know, we have this huge operation helping, delivering humanitarian aid. It's also extremely important, all of this. But yeah. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about, because it's it's like an existential thing to all of us. Rev?
I think one of vastly underrated advantage of crypto, especially in this, you know, like Russian terrorist war. It's not the Ukrainian war; it's Russian war. We're not in a war in a way, like we're not starting the war. It's Russian. So it's the fact that those Russians are adequate to understand that there's actually a war, but their government, the terrorist government that started the war in Ukraine, and they are sort of against that, they can leverage crypto to donate. Because if they do that through fiat, they'll literally straight, especially like if they're in Russia, they will straight ahead go to jail, like 30, 15 years, maybe all of their lives, I don't know. And I personally have friends who donated to Unchain and some other, Web3 fundraising efforts, including Ukraine DAO. And they've done that through crypto, and they're still okay. Most of them actually left Russia, which is absolutely support. And so that's, you know, privacy and security. I wouldn't say like there is like 100% anonymity in crypto. It's very tricky. Maybe it's tricky. But if you do it right, you can still sort of, you know, anonymize yourself to the level that it will be very tricky for the government to find that it's you and that you're in Russia, etc. So that's the first like huge advantage. The second thing I would say is a bit of execution. And also something that helped us especially is that Ukraine is like very, very crypto friendly. Like literally even the government itself fundraised in the cryptocurrency, right? More than $100 million. And the speed of execution that you can get by utilizing, leveraging blockchain tech, it's much faster than, you would need to wait, 2-3 days through the bank transfer, etc. sometimes, right? Or like, it's not like, okay, sorry, it's a weekend. You cannot tell, send me the bank transfer, right? Like, let's wait for Monday, but it's war happening. Sorry, hey, you don't need to, you don't need the permission. You don't need to wait for all of that. And true, like, I agree with Alona 100%. Like, we donated Unchain Fund treasury to humanitarian aid. I donate my own money to my army because I support army, and I think that's more important in a way of the logic that Alona mentioned, but I do understand that there is, from even legal standpoint, a lot of organizations and companies and even venture capitalists that donated to Unchained, it's just illegal for them to donate to army. So having like, non-profits in place that also help, just civilians, it's also a great way to balance that. So I think like these two areas should coexist, but I absolutely agree that those people fighting for Ukraine, it wasn't like a dream for them, right? It's just something they're doing because we all care first and foremost about freedom, and that's something that we will never sacrifice. And I would say that Ukrainians would rather die than quit, and that's something that's very true and very like deep of a spirit of Ukrainian, like unstoppable force of innovation, of victory, and that's something that no matter what Russia would try to do, they will never take from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for a fantastic panel and all of the incredible work that you've been doing for Ukraine via Unchain Fund, Ukraine DAO, and many other initiatives, and inspiring people such as myself and many others to also get involved and join the movement. So thank you.